This video is going to be about the netjeru and the netjeru, the gods and goddesses of ancient Egypt. So I don't have a whole lot of preparatory stuff to say. Let's just get into it. I'll see you after the talk.
So, the gods. There are a lot of them. They are, as I said, neither omniscient nor omnipotent. There are two ways to view them. In modern times, we tend to look at them all as specialists, as being god or goddess of this or that thing. Like Jehudi being, Thoth being the god of writing, and Sekhmet being the goddess of medicine. And we have them in these very specific roles. But that wasn't necessarily how they were viewed in ancient Egypt. In ancient Egypt, each town had a temple, and that temple had a god. And that god or goddess in that temple was kind of a general practitioner. They were capable of addressing any concern that their people might have. Each of these gods or goddesses, within the context of their own cult, was viewed as a supreme deity. They were the creator. They were more powerful than the other netjeru. You'll hear me in the ritual later on today. I'll be saying things about Sekhmet, like she's more mighty than the netjeru, and that's what this means. The god or goddess, all of them were the supreme god or goddess. And that wasn't a problem for the ancient Egyptians. Some people say that they had a primitive sense of logic. That's not true. They just had a different sense of logic. What we use today is called classical logic, and it's our inheritance from the Greeks. The defining trait of classical logic is that there can be only one value for truth. So if statement A is true, and then statement B contradicts it, then statement B must be false. But the ancient Egyptians practiced a form of logic called many-valued logic, which is exactly what it sounds like. There can be more than one value for truth. And I find that this is so very helpful in many ways. And it's not just a matter of cultural relativism gone wild. You can see it at work in things like the nature of light. Is it a particle? Is it a wave? It's both. It depends on the context. And that's what I understand many-valued logic to be. I usually explain this with a thought experiment, I think is what it's called. Just imagine that you have this beautiful and extremely complex rock formation. It's got arches, loops, bends and curves, and then you've got lots of people. They're standing all around it, viewing this formation from different directions, maybe even from different angles. The outline of this formation is going to appear very different from one person to the next, but they are all true perceptions of that formation within that context. So that's how you can have multiple creation stories, multiple supreme deities in ancient Egypt, and there were no holy wars between temples, with one significant exception, a certain heretic king who apparently tried to ditch that, and then as soon as he died, everybody was like, well, that didn't work out so well. And we went back to doing what we do. So which one should you use? A specialist or a general practitioner? Well, either approach is valid, so it's up to you. The specialist was occasionally, it did come into use in ancient Egypt, but it developed because one town's town god would become popular enough that their worship would spill into neighboring towns, which already had their own perfectly capable town god. So in order to not be redundant, this new coming netjer would adopt a more specialized role, which was based on their mythology, their personality. It didn't come from nothing, but within the context of their own cult, they continued to be addressed as supreme. I feel that when you're asking for help with anything, the most important thing is, who do you have the best relationship with? I often get asked by people, I have this problem, I want to do this thing. Who should I ask for help? Who do you know best? I feel that it's very similar to if you went up to a person on the street and asked them to help you with something. Maybe they'd help you, maybe they wouldn't. Even if they were a specialist in the thing that you were needing help with, if they were really pressed for time, they might be like, sorry, I can't right now, I've got to go. But if they were someone that you had a deep relationship with, they would be much more inclined to put that aside and say, okay, I'm really busy right now, but here is what I can do for you. So, for example, if I needed help with something medical, I would go to Sekhmet because the deities that I worship primarily are Bastet, Sekhmet, Jehuti, Thoth, and Anpu, Anubis. And of those four, Sekhmet has the strongest relationship with medicine. But if I wanted to work on my leadership skills, for example, um, I wouldn't I wouldn't say that any of those four are particularly associated with leadership. Maybe Jehudi, because he has that diplomacy thing going on. But I would go with whoever I had the strongest relationship with, which would probably be either, it definitely would be either Bastet or Sekhmet, because they are my main two. But somebody who had a close relationship with Heru, for example, that would be a great one to go to for leadership. But if he doesn't know who you are and you've never made any attempt to reach out to him before, I think you would be better served by going with whoever it is that you know. But I do find that when they help us, the netjeru's assistance often manifests itself in opportunities for us to help ourselves. So, for example, you might find that you have access to new information. You might find that you have a boost in your confidence or your resolve to get through whatever it is that's holding you back. Maybe a new job opening opens up, but you still have to apply. Maybe you discover a sliding scale health clinic, but you still got to go there. I like to remember that the god's primary role is to hold the forces of Isfet at bay, and it's a full-time fight, and we really want them to do that. So if they don't have time to stop everything and fix my problems for me, I feel that it's very fair for me to meet them halfway and make an effort on my own behalf. I think that the gods can't do everything all the time, or else there wouldn't be suffering in the world, right? My personal impression is that the netjeru view us as worthy allies, worth investing in to help us become strong enough to confront the Isfet which manifests in our own lives. They're very understanding, they're gracious, encouraging, comforting, and supporting, but they help us to help ourselves rather than to become reliant on them. So the ritual we're going to be doing today is going to honor Sekhmet. So let's talk a little bit about her. Sekhmet is usually shown as a woman with the head of a male lion. She is what we call an Eye of Ra, which is a title that's held by a lot of goddesses, and only goddesses, by the way. Most of these goddesses can take either a lion or cobra form. There are two kind of modes that the Eye of Ra can manifest in. There's the pacified Eye of Ra, who is usually very happy, a very joyous goddess. And then there's the raging Eye of Ra, who is angry, usually at some injustice that is going to be destroyed very shortly. A lot of people fear Sekhmet because of her anger. We make a lot of her anger, and that may be because of one of her major myths is where she almost wiped out all of humanity. And granted, that's scary, but there was a very good reason for it. The nature of Sekhmet's anger is not just that she's a grumpy or crotchety old goddess all the time. She perceives the beauty, the potential of Ma'at. She sees the gift of this world, and she sees it being destroyed by selfishness, by careless, thoughtless action. That's what gets her angry. So if you haven't done anything wrong, or if it was an accident and you're willing to make amends, you really don't have any reason to fear her. She is traditionally pacified with beer. We will not be doing that this evening. The hive does not allow alcohol, and at first my Reconstructionist brain started spinning, thinking, well, how can I fix this? How can I find a way around the alcohol prohibition? And I actually had a very nice food model beer glass made up, and it looks great. The artist did a fantastic job. And then I thought, why am I trying so hard to offer beer to Sekhmet tonight? You don't have to. It's not a requirement. I don't want people to think that you have to drink alcohol to be Kemetic. And if you are going to offer something, you should be willing to consume it. My plan for reverting and consuming this fake beer was to pour water over the glass and then drink the water. But if you do not drink alcohol, don't offer alcohol, or give it to somebody who does. You can give offerings away to others. That is totally in keeping with ancient Egyptian tradition. But yeah, if you are a vegetarian, you don't eat meat, don't offer meat. If you are allergic to peanuts, don't offer peanuts. It's totally fine. So this myth that I was talking about, the myth of the slaying of mankind, it starts out with people who are living on Earth with the gods living among them. And Ra, Sekhmet's father, is the king of the land of Egypt, but he's getting older. And people are starting to think, he's getting kind of old, and I don't think that maybe he's really up to being our king anymore, and we're going to go in there and assassinate him or overthrow him or something. Yeah, seems like a good idea. No, I see heads shaking. No, you're right. That was not a good idea, because Ra found out about it, and he calls all of his advisors in, and he tells them what's going on. He's like, what do you think I should do? And they said, send your eye out. And remember, the Eye of Ra is one who destroys. She specifically destroys the enemies of Ra. She destroys the agents of Isfet. So they said, send your eye out. They specified Hathor, who is normally viewed as a pacified form of the eye, but she does not always take the form of a pacified Eye of Ra. Do not be mistaken. She goes out and she starts slaughtering. And she comes back and she tells Ra that she has overpowered the humans. She has killed the humans, and it was pleasing to her heart. And Ra says that he will overpower the humans. And in a very typical example of wordplay, the myth that says, "Thus the powerful one came into being." And the powerful one is a literal translation of Sekhmet's name. Actually, the names, what we usually think of as names for the gods and goddesses of ancient Egypt, are not actually their names. They are epithets. They're most commonly used epithets. If we knew the names of the gods and goddesses, we'd have power over them. So that information is not given out freely. But anyway, so this is kind of Sekhmet's origin story. She now is Sekhmet. Remember, she killed all those people when she was Hathor. I like to point that out. But she's like drunk on the blood. She's crazed with bloodlust. She goes back out, and Ra's like, "Oh wow, I have really messed up." She is going to kill everyone now, not just the people who were plotting rebellion, but everyone. So he calls his advisors in again. He's a very good king. He takes input from everyone, and they devise a plan. They tell the humans to brew a whole bunch of beer, and they put red ochre from elephantine into the beer to make it look like blood, and they pour it out on the fields. And Sekhmet wakes up the next morning. She walks over to these pools of blood. She looks in, and she sees her face, and it's beautiful. And she starts to drink. And she gets so drunk that she forgets all about the people. She gets really happy, and she comes back to Ra. She's like, "Hi." And they welcome her back, and she turns back into Hathor. So I do offer beer to Sekhmet every now and then, not because I'm afraid of her, but because every now and then I just want to have a beer with Sekhmet. So, as I mentioned earlier, within her own cult, she is all-powerful, not omnipotent, but all-powerful in the sense that she can influence all areas. She is very concerned with appropriate actions, that is, actions which are within the scope of Ma'at. She's a patron goddess of medical workers. I myself am a licensed veterinary technician, and I relate to Sekhmet a lot through my work. And we in veterinary medicine, and probably those of you who are in human medicine as well, I don't know, we have this thing called the 5 rights of medication use. That's the right patient, the right drug, the right time, the right dose, and the right route. Because life-saving medication can become poison if it's given inappropriately. I feel that this is both very poignant in respect to Sekhmet's focus on appropriate action, and also it reflects her dual nature as both a healer and a dealer of death. And when she was angered by humanity's betrayal of her father Ra, Sekhmet's reaction was a killing rampage, literally cutting out the offending species from the rest of creation. Medically speaking, I feel that approach is reflected well in the surgical excision of cancer, necrotic tissues, and other offending pathologies. But she can also be kind. She's a healer and a mother. And when you're really hurting, she will support you and tend your wounds. Now, I've had a couple of experiences which I'd like to share with you guys, which I feel demonstrate both of these aspects of her very well. When I first moved away from my family, I moved to California, and I was in a very toxic relationship at the time. I got out, I got better. The gods have helped me a lot on working on myself since then. But at the time, I had very low self-esteem. I let my partner walk all over me, and I had appendicitis. I did not know this, but he told me that we couldn't afford for me to go see a doctor. Um, he could still afford to take himself out to eat for lunch and go to video game conventions, of course, but I couldn't go to a doctor. So I just tried to grit my teeth and bear through it. And it just kept getting worse. The pain would come and go. Each time it came, it was worse. And one day, all I could do was lay on the ground and scream in pain. And my partner decided that he did not want to hear me screaming. It bothered him. So he told me he was leaving to go to the video game arcade and play games, and he hoped that I was feeling better when he got back. And after he left, I was laying on the floor screaming, and I felt a giant paw on my chest. And I felt her claws extend and start raking down the left side of my chest, snapping my ribs as she went. And I remember a moment of lucidity where I thought, the thing about having an imaginary lion on your chest, breaking your ribs, is that she's not actually breaking your ribs, so she can do it over and over again, which she did. It just kept on snapping those ribs over and over again, and I was begging, pleading with her, asking, why are you hurting me? Please stop. What have I done? Until finally something else in me broke, and I called my mother. Fortunately, the phone was also on the floor because we didn't have much furniture. So I called my mother, and she was like, what are you doing? Call an ambulance. We'll figure the money out later. So I did. And they rushed me to the hospital, and it was a good thing because my surgeon said that if I had waited any longer, I would have died. I was pretty much dying of septic shock when I got in. But my appendix had not only ruptured, it had become gangrenous and completely rotted away. And I lost a portion of my intestinal tract as well. I was in the hospital for a long time. Fortunately, my mother flew out to take care of me when I got out of the hospital because my partner could not be bothered to go to the pharmacy to pick up my pain meds. He didn't want me to make him late to work. My mother had to hitchhike to the pharmacy to get the pain meds. The doctors wanted me to be up and walking around, but I was too tired. I was too painful, but at the same time, I was happy because I had been trying to break up with my partner for a long time, and he always managed to turn the situation back on me. I was easily manipulated. But he was also very good at manipulation. I like to at least tell myself that. He would make me feel like I was the one who was being cruel and unreasonable and that he deserved another chance. And of course, I would give it to him and nothing would change. But after a while, it got to the point where I started arguing myself out of arguing with him before he even had a chance. But I felt that I needed to have something that I could point to that he couldn't argue with, that I could point to and say, this is why I'm divorcing you, and you can't say anything about it. And I almost died, and he left me to go play video games. And so I was like, I have it now. This is my reason. I was free. And he couldn't argue with it. He didn't. He knew he messed up. So I am divorced now. I am happily divorced. I'm free. Thank you very much. But but my doctors wanted me to walk around. I did not want to. My mother knew how to make me walk around, though. She knew how much I loved museums. I don't know if she knew that I was really into Egypt, but she found an Egyptian museum in our area, and she took me there. And it worked like a charm. They had benches I could toddle around and just kind of sit down as I got tired. But I was walking through the exhibits and I saw this exhibit of the sistra, which are sacred rattles, which I would show you if I had unpacked my box before I came up here. I'll show you later. Um, but I was looking at this exhibit, and one of the sistra had a little cat on the top of it, and I loved it because I love cats. So I turned around and I was still looking at the sistrum as I was backing away, and I felt like I backed into a brick wall. And my first thought was, I've backed into another patron. And I turned around and there's nobody there except for two statues of Sekhmet. And I looked at them and I am certain that one of them, and I knew exactly which one, was an open statue of Sekhmet that must have been from a temple or something. She was beautiful. She was radiating power. And I felt this overwhelming urge to kneel down. But at the same time, I felt her reach out and hold me up. Because I think she knew that if I went down at that time, I was not getting back up. There was no way. There was nothing for me to hold on to. I would have been trapped. So that was the first time that I encountered her caring, kind side, that supportive, loving arm. And actually, up until that point, I had been very fearful of Sekhmet. So those are my two experiences. The one very frightening experience of her standing on my chest, breaking my ribs, and the second very kind, supportive experience where she held me up as I encountered her in the museum. So to sum up, Sekhmet is a wise goddess. She knows what's right, and she's willing to fight for it. Now, as I mentioned earlier, the netjeru that I work with the most are Bastet and Sekhmet. I also work with Anpu, Anubis, and Jehudi, Toth. If you'd like information on a specific deity, I will be taking questions after the talk or on the Facebook group, or if you are here from the Reddit group, hi, you know where to find me. I will do my best to answer any questions that you have, but those four are the ones that I know the best.
The netjeru are amazing beings, awesome cosmic powers, but gracious and understanding of our human learning curve. I've never known a netjer to reject an offering or a gesture that was well intended, even if it wasn't in, let's say, alignment with the traditional way of doing things. And I know it's scandalous to hear a Reconstructionist say that, right? But I've even seen people doing things that maybe I would avoid doing that, but they're doing it from a place of love. And they just don't understand that culturally this would be offensive. uh, I've never known a netjer to take offense. They are very kind and gracious, as I've said. And as a dear friend of mine, Richard Reedy, Justified, used to say, the netjeru are not to be outdone in generosity. They have a very generous spirit. So that was my talk on the basic nature and role of the netjeru in ancient Egyptian religion. I'm sorry I didn't have time to go into all of the different gods and goddesses. That would take a very long time. But leave a comment below if there's a particular one you're interested in. And also let me know let me know who you are devoted to. Let me know how you met them. What do you do with them? How do you honor them in your life? I would love to hear your stories. So the next video, I believe, is going to be on more physical stuff. So altars, natron, and ritual clothing, I believe, is the topic. So I'll see you then, and be well.